The office of Giovani Auditore was on the first floor and overlooked the gardens behind the palazzo through 2 sets of double windows which opened onto one broad balcony. The room was paneled in dark scrolled oak, whose severity was scarcely mitigated by the ornate plasterwork of the ceiling. 2 desks faced each other in the room, the larger of which belonged to Giovanni, and the walls were lined with bookcases stuffed with ledgers and parchment scrolls from which heavy red seals dangled. The room was designed to say to any visitor, "Here you will find opulence, respectability, and trust." As head of the Auditore International Bank, which specialized in loans to the kingdoms of Germania within what was notionally at least a Holy Roman Empire, Giovani Auditore was well aware of the weighty and responsible position he held. He hoped his 2 older sons would make haste to come to their senses and help him shoulder the burdens he had inherited from his own father, but he could see no sign of that yet. Nevertheless, he glowered across the room at his middle son from his seat at his desk. Ezio stood near the other desk, vacated by Giovanni's secretary to give father and son the privacy they required for what Ezio feared would be a very painful interview. It was now early afternoon. He'd been dreading the summons all morning, though he'd also used the time to snatch a couple of hours of necessary sleep and smarten himself up. He guessed his father had wanted to give him those opportunities before carpeting him. "Do you think me blind and deaf, my son?" Giovanni was thundering. "Do you think I haven't heard all about the fight with Vieri de Pazzi and his lot down by the bridge last night? Sometimes, Ezio, I think you're not much better than he is, and the Pazzi make for dangerous enemies." Ezio was about to speak, but his father held up a cautionary hand. "Kindly allow me to finish." He took a breath. "And as if that weren't bad enough, you take it upon yourself to chase after Cristina Calfucci, the daughter of one of the most successful merchants in all Tuscany, and not content with that, to tumble her in her own bed. It's intolerable. Don't you consider our family's reputation at all?" He paused, and Ezio was surprised to see the ghost of a twinkle in his eye. "You do realize what all this means, don't you?" continued Giovanni. "You do realize who you remind me of, don't you?" Ezio bowed his head, but then he was surprised when his father got up, crossed the room to him and put an arm round his shoulder, grinning from ear to ear. "You little devil, you remind me of myself when I was your age." But Giovanni immediately became grave again. "Don't think, however, that I wouldn't punish you without mercy if I didn't have sore need of you here. If I didn't, mark my words, I'd send you off to your Uncle Mario and get him to recruit you into his condottieri squadron. That'd knock some sense into you, but I have to count on you, and although you don't seem to have the brains to see it, we're passing through a crucial time in our city. How's your head feeling? I see you've taken the bandage off." "Much better, father. So I assume nothing's going to interfere with the work I have lined up for you for the rest of the day?" "I promise you, father." "It's a promise you'd better keep." Giovanni returned to his desk and, from a compartment, drew a letter bearing his own seal and passed it to his son, together with 2 parchment documents in a leather case. "I want you to deliver these to Lorenzo de Medici at his bank without any delay." "May I ask what it concerns, father?" "As for the documents, you may not. But it'd be as well for you to know that the letter brings Lorenzo up to date on our dealings with Milan. I spent all this morning preparing it. This must go no farther, but if I don't give you my trust, you'll never learn responsibility. There's a rumor of a plot against Duke Galeazzo, a nasty piece of work, I grant you, but Florence can't afford to have Milan destabilized." "Who's involved?" Giovanni looked at his son narrowly. "They say the principal conspirators are Giovanni Lampugnani, Gerolamo Olgiati, and Carlo Visconti, but it looks as if our own dear Francesco de Pazzi is involved as well, and above all, there's a plan afoot which seems to encompass more than just the politics of 2 city-states. The Gonfaloniere here has taken Francesco into custody for the moment, but the Pazzi won't like that at all." Giovanni stopped himself. "There. I've already told you far too much. Make sure this gets to Lorenzo quickly. I've heard he's leaving for Korei very soon to take some country air, and while the cat's away, I'll get it there as fast as possible." "Good boy, go now." Ezio set off on his own, using the back streets as far as possible, never thinking that Vieri might still be out looking for him. But suddenly, in a quiet street within minutes of the Medici Bank, there he stood, blocking Ezio's path. Trying to double back, Ezio found more of Vieri's men blocking his retreat. He turned again. "Sorry, my little piglet," he shouted at Vieri, "but I simply don't have time to give you another drubbing now." "It's not me that's going to get a drubbing," Vieri shouted back. "You're cornered, but don't worry. I'll send a nice wreath for your funeral." The Pazzi men were closing in. No doubt Vieri knew of his father's imprisonment by now. Ezio looked around desperately. The street's tall houses and walls hemmed him in. Slinging the satchel containing the precious documents securely round his body, he selected the most likely house within his reach and sprang at its wall, gripping the rough-hewn stone with both hands and feet before scaling up to the roof. Once there, he paused a moment to look down at Vieri's irate face. "I haven't even got time to piss on you," he said, and scampered away along the rooftop as fast as he could, dropping to the ground with newfound agility as soon as he was clear of his pursuers. A few moments later, he was at the doors of the bank. He entered and recognized Boio, one of Lorenzo's most trusted servants. Here was a stroke of luck. Ezio hurried up to him. "Hey, Ezio, what brings you here in such a hurry?" "Boio, there is no time to waste. I have letters here from my father for Lorenzo." Boio looked serious and spread his hands. "Ahime, Ezio, you're too late. He's gone to Korei. Then you must make sure he gets these as soon as possible." "I'm sure he hasn't gone for more than a day or so. In these times, I'm beginning to find out about these times. Make sure he gets them, Boio, and in confidence, as soon as possible." When he had returned to his own palazzo, he made his way quickly to his father's office, ignoring both the amiable backchat from Federico, who was lazing under a tree in the garden, and the attempts of his father's secretary, Giulio, to prevent him from passing the closed door of Giovanni's inner sanctum. There he discovered his father in deep conversation with the Chief Justice of Florence, the gonfalonier Uberto Alberti. No surprise there, for the two men were old friends, and Ezio treated Alberti as he would an uncle, but he'd caught expressions of deep seriousness on their faces. "Ezio, my boy," said Uberto genially. "How are you? Out of breath as usual, I see." Ezio looked urgently at his father. "I've been trying to calm your father down," continued Uberto. "There's been a lot of trouble, you know, but—" He turned to Giovanni and his tone became more earnest. "The threat is ended." "Have you delivered the documents?" Giovanni asked crisply. "Yes, father." But Duke Lorenzo had already left. Giovanni frowned. "I hadn't anticipated his leaving so soon." "I left them with Boio," said Ezio. "He'll get them to him as soon as possible." "That may not be soon enough," said Giovanni. Darkly Uberto patted him on the back. "Look," he said, "it can only mean a day or two. We have Francesco under lock and key. What could possibly happen in such a short time?" Giovanni seemed partially reassured, but it was clear that the two men had more to discuss, and that Ezio's presence wasn't desired. "Go and find your mother and your sister," said Giovanni. "You should spend time with some of the rest of the family other than Federico, you know, and rest that head of yours. I'll have need of you again later." And with a wave of his father's hand, Ezio was dismissed. He wandered through the house, nodding greetings to one or two of the family servants, and to Giulio, who was hurrying back to the bank office from somewhere, a sheaf of papers in his hand and looking, as usual, haunted by all the business he carried in his head. Ezio waved to his brother, still lounging in the garden, but felt no desire to join him. Besides, he'd been told to keep his mother and sister company, and he knew better than to disobey his father, especially after their discussion earlier in the day. He found his sister sitting alone in the loggia, a neglected book of Petrarch in her hands. That figured. He knew she was in love. "Ciao, Claudia," he said, Ciao, Ezio. Where have you been? Ezio spread his hands. I've been running a business errand for father. That's not all I hear, she retorted, but her smile was faint and automatic. Where's mother? Claudia sighed. She's gone to see that young painter they're all talking about. You know, the one who's just finished his apprenticeship with Verrocchio. Really? Don't you pay attention to anything that goes on in this house? She's commissioned some paintings from him. She believes that they'll be a good investment in time. That's our mother for you. But Claudia didn't respond, and for the first time Ezio became fully aware of the sadness in her face. It made her look much older than her 16 years. What's the matter, Sorellina? He asked, sitting on the stone bench beside her. She sighed and looked at him with a rueful smile. It's Duccio, she said at last. What about him? Her eyes filled with tears. I've found out that he's being unfaithful to me. Ezio frowned. Duccio was practically engaged to Claudia, and even though there hadn't yet been any formal announcement. Who told you that? He asked, putting an arm round her. The other girls. She wiped her eyes and looked at him. I thought they were my friends, but I think they enjoyed telling me. Ezio stood up angrily. Then they're little better than harpies. You're better off without them. But I loved him. Ezio took a moment before replying. Are you sure? Maybe you only thought you did. How do you feel now? Claudia's eyes were dry. I'd like to see him suffer, even if only a little. He's really hurt me, Ezio. Ezio looked at his sister, looked at the sadness in her eyes, a sadness suffused with not a little flare of anger. His heart steeled. I think I'll pay him a visit. Duccio Divisi wasn't at home, but the housekeeper told Ezio where to find him. Ezio made his way across the Ponte Vecchio and westward along the south bank of the Arno to the church of San Jacopo Soprano. There were some secluded gardens nearby, where lovers occasionally kept their trysts. Ezio, whose blood was boiling on behalf of his sister, yet needed more proof of Duccio's infidelity than hearsay, began to think that he was about to get it. Sure enough, he soon caught sight of the blond young man, dressed to kill, sitting on a bench overlooking the river, his arm round a dark-haired girl he didn't recognize. He made his way forward cautiously. Darling, it's beautiful, the girl was saying, holding out her hand. Ezio saw the flash of a diamond ring. Nothing but the best for you, amore, Duccio purred, pulling her towards him for a kiss. But the girl pulled back. Not so fast. You can't just buy me. We haven't been seeing each other that long, and I've heard you've been promised to Giovani Auditore. Duccio spat. It's over. Anyway, father says I can do better than an auditor. He clamped her bottom in his hand. You, for example. Birbante, let's walk a bit. I can think of something that'd be much more fun, said Duccio, putting his hand between her legs. That was enough for Ezio. Hey, Lurido Porco, he snapped. Duccio was taken completely by surprise and spun round, releasing his hold on the girl. Hey, Ezio, my friend, he cried, but there was nervousness in his voice. How much had Ezio seen? I don't think you've met my cousin? Ezio, enraged at the treachery, stepped forward and punched his former friend full in the face. Duccio, you should be ashamed of yourself. You insult my sister parading around with this putana. Who are you calling a putana? The girl snarled, but she got to her feet and backed off. I should have thought even a girl like you could do better than this arsehole, Ezio told her. Do you really think he's going to make you into a lady? Don't you talk to her like that, Duccio hissed. At least she's more generous with her favors than your tight-ass little sister. But I guess she's got a hole as dry as a nun's. Pity I could have taught her a thing or two. But there again, Ezio interrupted him coldly. You've broken her heart, Duccio. Have I? What a shame. Which is why I am going to break your arm. The girl screamed at this and fled. Ezio seized the whining Duccio and forced the young gallant's right arm over the edge of the stone bench on which he'd been sitting with a hard-on only moments before. He pushed the forearm against the stone until Duccio's whining turned to tears. "Stop it, Ezio, I beg you, I'm my father's only son." Ezio looked at him with contempt and released him. Duccio fell to the ground and rolled over, nursing his bruised arm and whimpering, his fine clothes torn and besmirched. "You're not worth the effort," Ezio told him. "But if you don't want me to change my mind about that arm of yours, stay away from Claudia, and stay away from me." After the incident, Ezio walked a long way home, wandering along the riverbank until he'd almost reached the fields. When he turned back, the shadows were lengthening, but his mind was calmer. It would never become him as a man, he told himself, to allow his anger ever fully to rule him. Close to his house, he caught sight of his younger brother, whom he hadn't seen since the morning of the previous day. He greeted the lad warmly. "Ciao, Petruccio. What are you up to? Have you given your tutor the slip? And anyway, isn't it past your bedtime?" "Don't be silly, I'm practically grown up. In a few years' time, I'll be able to knock the stuffing out of you." The brothers grinned at each other. Petruccio was holding a carved pearwood box close to his chest. It was open, and Ezio noticed a handful of white and brown feathers in it. "They're eagle's feathers," explained the boy. He pointed to the top of the tower of a nearby building. "There's an old nest up there. The young must have fledged and gone. I can see plenty more feathers caught in the stonework." Petruccio looked at his brother pleadingly. "Ezio, would you mind getting a few more for me?" "Well, what do you want them for?" Petruccio looked down. "It's a secret," he said. "If I get them for you, will you go in? It's late." "Yes. Promise? Promise." "All right then." Ezio thought, well, I've done Claudia a favor today. No reason why I shouldn't do one for Petruccio as well. Climbing the tower was tricky, as its stone was smooth and he had to concentrate to find grips and toe holds in the joints between its stones. Higher up, ornamental moldings helped as well. In the end, it took him half an hour, but he managed to gather 15 more feathers, all that he could see, and brought them back to Petruccio. "You missed one," said Petruccio, pointing up. "Bed," growled his brother. Petruccio fled. Ezio hoped their mother would be pleased with the gift. It didn't take much to fathom Petruccio's secrets. He smiled as he entered the house himself,